Jonathan Hayes sat in his sleek, glass-walled office on the 25th floor of Market Max's corporate headquarters. Outside, the city buzzed with life. Cars honking, people rushing to their destinations, and skyscrapers glowing under the late afternoon sun. But inside, Jonathan felt disconnected. Despite leading one of the largest retail chains in the country, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. Sure, profits were up, stock prices were soaring, and shareholders were happy. But what about the people who made it all possible? The cashiers scanning groceries at midnight, the stock clerks unloading trucks before sunrise, or the janitors mopping floors when no one was watching. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the framed photos on his desk. One showed him shaking hands with investors. Another captured him accepting an award for Retail Innovator of the Year. Yet none of these images told the real story of Market Max, the hard work happening behind the scenes. Jonathan sighed, realizing he hadn't stepped foot in one of his stores in months. He knew the numbers, the strategies, and the marketing campaigns, but he didn't know his employees. And deep down, he wondered if they even mattered to him beyond their roles as cogs in his well-oiled machine. That evening, while scrolling through emails, Jonathan stumbled upon a suggestion from the HR department. Employee Engagement Initiative. Experience life on the front lines. It was vague but intriguing. The idea was simple. Send executives undercover to experience the daily grind of frontline workers. At first, Jonathan dismissed it as unnecessary. After all, he had risen through the ranks himself, starting as a sales associate decades ago. But then he paused. How much had changed since those days? Could he still relate to the struggles of his staff today? The more he thought about it, the more determined he became. This wasn't just about improving employee morale. It was personal. If he wanted to lead effectively, he needed to reconnect with the heart of his company. So without consulting anyone, Jonathan decided to take matters into his own hands. He would go undercover, not as the powerful CEO of Market Max, but as John, a temporary worker looking for extra cash. A week later, Jonathan found himself standing outside a bustling Market Max store in downtown Chicago. It was nearly 10 p.m. and the streets were alive with activity. Streetlights cast warm glows onto sidewalks crowded with pedestrians, some heading home after long shifts, others beginning their nights. The store itself was massive, stretching across 2 stories with neon signs advertising discounts and promotions. To most passers-by, it looked like any other big-box retailer. But to Jonathan, it represented an opportunity, a chance to see his empire from the ground level. Dressed in faded jeans, a plain blue polo shirt, and sneakers, Jonathan barely recognized himself. Gone were the tailored suits and polished leather shoes. Instead, he carried a worn backpack containing a fake ID, a few snacks, and a notepad to jot down observations. As he pushed open the heavy glass doors, the cool air conditioning hit him immediately, carrying the faint scent of fresh produce and cleaning supplies. The store was alive with energy, even this late at night. Shoppers wandered the aisles, grabbing last-minute essentials, while employees hustled to keep shelves stocked and checkout lines moving. At the break room entrance, Jonathan met Linda, the assistant manager overseeing the night shift. She greeted him warmly, handing him a name tag that read, John T., in bold black letters. "Welcome aboard, John," she said with a smile. "We're short-staffed tonight, so we could really use your help. You okay with jumping right in?" Jonathan nodded, trying to appear confident despite his nerves. He followed her to the register area, where a group of cashiers was huddled together, chatting quietly between customers. One of them caught his eye almost instantly. Her name was Maria Alvarez, though he wouldn't learn that until later. She stood at the far end of the row, ringing up items with practiced efficiency. Her dark hair was pulled back into a neat ponytail, and her uniform fit snugly, showing signs of wear from countless shifts. What struck Jonathan most, however, was her demeanor. Even as tired-looking customers snapped at her or fumbled with coupons, Maria remained calm and composed. There was a warmth in her voice as she wished each person a good night, and a genuine smile that never faltered, no matter how stressful things got. Over the next hour, Jonathan shadowed different employees, learning the ropes of stocking shelves, organizing returns, and assisting customers. Each task seemed straightforward enough, but the pace was relentless. Just as he finished restocking a display of cereal boxes, a new shipment arrived requiring immediate attention. By midnight, his feet ached, his back throbbed, and his mind swirled with exhaustion. Still, he pressed on, determined to prove himself, not just to the team but to himself. As the hours ticked by, Jonathan began noticing small details about his coworkers. There was Carlos, the elderly janitor who hummed old Spanish ballads while sweeping the aisles. Then there was Priya, a shy teenager working her first job, meticulously folding clothes in the apparel section. And of course, there was Maria, whose kindness radiated throughout the store. Whether it was offering a kind word to a frazzled parent or helping a lost customer find what they needed, she exuded a quiet strength that inspired everyone around her. By 2 a.m., the crowd had thinned considerably, leaving only a handful of stragglers wandering the aisles. Most of the staff took advantage of the lull to grab quick breaks or catch up on paperwork. Jonathan, however, stayed glued to his post, eager to soak in every moment of this unfamiliar world. Little did he know, the most unforgettable part of his night was yet to come, and it would change everything he thought he knew about leadership, empathy, and the true meaning of success. The clock struck 2:30 a.m., and the store had settled into a rhythm that felt almost hypnotic. The hum of fluorescent lights overhead blended with the faint squeak of cartwheels rolling across the polished floor. Most of the shoppers had gone home, leaving behind only a few stragglers, people who seemed to belong to the night in their own unique ways. A young man in a hoodie sat cross-legged in the electronics section, scrolling through his phone. An older woman shuffled slowly down the snack aisle, her basket holding nothing but a single bag of chips and a bottle of soda. And then there was the occasional hurried customer rushing in for milk or diapers, their faces etched with fatigue. Jonathan, now officially exhausted, leaned against the counter near the registers. He'd been working nonstop since he arrived, and his body was starting to protest. His feet ached from standing for hours, his arms burned from lifting heavy boxes, and his mind felt foggy from the constant stream of tasks. But despite the physical toll, he couldn't help but feel a strange sense of accomplishment. For once, he wasn't just signing off on reports or attending board meetings. He was part of the action, contributing in a way that felt raw and real. Maria, the cashier whose calm demeanor had caught his attention earlier, was still stationed at her register. She hadn't taken more than a 5-minute break all night, yet she showed no signs of slowing down. Jonathan watched her closely, marveling at how effortlessly she handled each transaction. Her hands moved with practiced precision, scanning items, bagging groceries, handing over receipts, all while maintaining eye contact and offering a friendly "have a great night" to every customer. It was as if she carried an invisible shield of patience, deflecting even the rudest remarks without missing a beat. But not everyone treated her kindly. Around 3 a.m., a tall man in a leather jacket approached her register. His voice boomed across the nearly empty store as he slammed a box of cereal onto the conveyor belt. "This price is wrong," he barked, pointing accusingly at the tag. Maria glanced at the item, then calmly explained that the sale must have ended earlier in the day. "I don't care about your excuses," the man snapped, leaning closer. "Fix it." Jonathan froze, unsure whether to intervene. The tension in the air was palpable, and for a moment Maria looked like she might falter, but instead she took a deep breath and nodded. "Let me check for you," she said softly, her tone steady despite the man's aggression. She disappeared into the back for a minute, returning with a manager who confirmed the pricing error. Though the issue was resolved quickly, the man stormed off without so much as a thank you, leaving Maria standing silently at her station. Jonathan waited until the coast was clear before approaching her. "Are you okay?" he asked hesitantly, unsure if he was overstepping boundaries. Maria shrugged, forcing a small smile. "It happens," she replied simply. "Some people are just having a bad day." Her nonchalance surprised him. How could someone endure such treatment and brush it off so easily? Was it resilience? or had years of dealing with difficult customers numbed her to the sting. Before Jonathan could ask more, a new customer approached the register. A college student clutching a small basket containing only a loaf of bread and a jar of peanut butter. The boy looked barely 18, his face pale and drawn under the harsh store lighting. He wore a threadbare hoodie and jeans patched in several places, and his sneakers were scuffed beyond repair. As he placed his items on the counter, Jonathan noticed his hands trembling slightly. Maria greeted him warmly, scanning the items with efficiency. When the total flashed on the screen, $4.75, the boy hesitated. He dug into his pocket, pulling out a wad of crumpled bills and loose change. His fingers fumbled as he counted them out, laying each coin carefully on the counter. Jonathan watched intently, feeling a pang of sympathy. This kid didn't look like he had much to spare. When the final tally came up short by $1.50, the boy's shoulders slumped. His face flushed red and he stammered, can I put this back?" Maria's expression softened immediately. She glanced at the items in front of her, the bare essentials, and shook her head gently. "No need," she said, reaching into her apron pocket. Without hesitation, she pulled out a few coins and dropped them onto the counter. "Here, let me cover it." The boy blinked, clearly stunned. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Maria smiled reassuringly. "Of course. Everyone deserves a good meal." She handed him the bag, adding, "Take care of yourself, okay?" The boy muttered a quiet thank you before hurrying away, clutching the groceries tightly to his chest. Jonathan stood frozen, his heart pounding. He had witnessed countless acts of generosity in his life. Charity events, fundraisers, corporate donations, but none had struck him quite like this. There was something profoundly human about Maria's gesture. It wasn't flashy or calculated. It was instinctive, born out of genuine compassion, and what made it even more remarkable was that Maria herself didn't seem to think twice about it. To her, helping the boy was just another part of her job. Unable to contain his curiosity, Jonathan waited until the next lull before sidling up to Maria again. "That was really kind of you," he began cautiously. "Not many people would do something like that." Maria shrugged, brushing off the compliment. "It's not a big deal," she said. "We've all been there, right? Times when we needed a little help and didn't know where to turn." Her words lingered in Jonathan's mind long after their conversation ended. Who was this woman, and what drove her to give so freely, even when she likely didn't have much to spare? Determined to find out, he decided to dig deeper. During a rare break, he joined Maria in the break room where she sat sipping a cup of coffee. At first she seemed guarded, unsure why John was suddenly so interested in her life. But as they talked, she gradually opened up. Maria told him about her journey, the challenges of raising 2 young children as a single mother, the sacrifices she made to keep food on the table and a roof over their heads. She worked nights because daycare was cheaper during the day, allowing her kids to stay with a trusted neighbor while she slept. Despite the grueling schedule, she was determined to finish her degree in business administration through online classes. "One day I want to be the one making decisions," she admitted, her eyes lighting up with determination. "To show my kids that hard work pays off." As she spoke, Jonathan found himself captivated, not just by her story, but by the strength and humility she exuded. Here was someone who faced unimaginable challenges every day, yet never lost sight of her dreams. She didn't complain about the long hours, the low pay, or the demanding customers. Instead, she focused on what she could control, finding joy in the small victories and purpose in helping others. By the time their break ended, Jonathan's perspective had shifted entirely. He realized that Maria wasn't just a cashier. She was the backbone of the store, the glue holding everything together. Her kindness wasn't an anomaly. It was a reflection of who she was as a person. And perhaps most importantly, she reminded him of something he had forgotten, that true leadership wasn't about titles or power. It was about empathy, connection, and understanding. As the night wore on, Jonathan continued observing the team, noticing similar acts of kindness among his coworkers. Carlos, the elderly janitor, shared snacks with a younger employee too tired to take a proper break. Priya, the shy teenager, stayed late to help clean up a spill that wasn't her responsibility. These moments may have seemed insignificant on the surface, but to Jonathan, they painted a picture of a community united by shared struggles and mutual support. For the first time in years, Jonathan felt truly inspired. He had entered the store expecting to learn about operations and efficiency, but instead, he discovered something far more valuable: the humanity within his workforce. And as he prepared to return to his role as CEO, he knew one thing for certain. Market Max's greatest asset wasn't its profits or its products, it was its people. As the night wore on, Jonathan couldn't shake the image of Maria quietly paying for that college student's groceries. It lingered in his mind like a melody he couldn't forget, a simple act of kindness that carried so much weight. He had always prided himself on being a fair and compassionate leader, but this was different. Maria's actions weren't part of a corporate initiative or a calculated move to boost morale. They were instinctive, born out of genuine empathy. And as he thought about it, he realized how rare such moments were in the world he inhabited. The polished, profit-driven sphere of corporate leadership. Curiosity gnawed at him. Who was Maria Alvarez really? What drove her to give so freely when she herself seemed to have so little? Determined to understand, Jonathan seized every opportunity to talk to her during lulls in the shift. At first, Maria was hesitant. She wasn't used to strangers taking an interest in her life, especially not someone who seemed as out of place as John. But something about his earnestness put her at ease. Maybe it was the way he listened, not just hearing her words, but truly absorbing them. Or maybe it was the fact that he didn't judge her for the long hours she worked or the sacrifices she made. Whatever it was, Maria slowly began to open up. She told him about her childhood growing up in a tight-knit, immigrant family. Her parents had worked tirelessly, her father as a construction worker, her mother cleaning houses, to provide for their children. From a young age, Maria learned the value of hard work and resilience. When she became a mother herself, those lessons stuck with her. After her husband left, she found herself juggling multiple jobs to make ends meet while caring for her two kids, Sophia and Mateo. Nights at Market Max gave her flexibility, even if it meant sacrificing sleep and time with her children. "I know what it's like to be broke," she admitted one night during a quiet moment. "There were times when I didn't know how I'd pay the rent or feed my kids. Strangers helped me then, neighbors bringing over meals, teachers slipping gift cards into my kids' backpacks. Those little acts of kindness kept me going. So, now whenever I can, I try to do the same for someone else." Her voice wavered slightly as she spoke, but there was a quiet strength in her words. Jonathan listened intently, his chest tightening with emotion. He had never struggled financially. Not like this. His success hadn't been handed to him on a silver platter, but neither had it come with the kind of desperation Maria described. For the first time, he understood why she gave so freely. It wasn't just about helping others, it was about paying forward the grace she had once received. But Maria's story wasn't all struggle and sacrifice. As she talked, Jonathan saw glimpses of hope and ambition. Despite the challenges, she refused to let life break her spirit. She was determined to build a better future for herself and her children. That's why she spent her days studying online courses in business administration, often late into the night after finishing her shift. "I want to show my kids that no matter where you start, you can create opportunities for yourself," she said firmly. "Someday I'll be the one making decisions, not just following orders." Her determination inspired Jonathan, but it also made him uneasy. How many others like Maria were out there? Talented, driven individuals trapped in roles that barely acknowledged their potential. He thought about the countless employees he passed in hallways or nodded at during meetings without ever knowing their names or stories. Had he failed them by focusing solely on numbers and bottom lines? The realization weighed heavily on him. The next few hours flew by as Jonathan continued observing the team. He noticed small acts of kindness everywhere. He looked. Carlos, the elderly janitor, shared snacks with a younger coworker too tired to take a proper break. Priya, the shy teenager folding clothes in the apparel section, stayed late to help clean up a spill that wasn't her responsibility. Even Linda, the assistant manager, went out of her way to check on everyone, offering encouragement and support, despite her own stress. These moments may have seemed insignificant on the surface, but to Jonathan, they painted a picture of a community united by shared struggles and mutual respect. Yet, not everything was perfect. Around 5 a.m., disaster struck. Maria was restocking shelves in the electronics aisle when a poorly secured display collapsed, sending several expensive items crashing to the floor. The sound echoed through the nearly empty store, drawing immediate attention from nearby staff. Jonathan rushed over, his heart sinking as he saw the damage. Broken tablets, cracked smartwatches, shattered headphones, thousands of dollars worth of merchandise lay scattered across the floor. Management arrived quickly, led by Linda, who looked visibly upset. A supervisor reviewed the security footage and concluded that Maria was responsible for failing to secure the display properly. While Jonathan knew accidents happened, the severity of the loss meant serious consequences. Disciplinary action loomed large, potentially costing Maria her job. Maria was devastated. She confided in Jonathan later, explaining that she had reported the unstable display multiple times but was ignored. "I begged them to fix it last week," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "They told me it wasn't urgent. Now look what's happened." Jonathan felt torn. On one hand, he wanted to reveal his true identity and intervene immediately. He could clear Maria's name, ensure she wasn't penalized unfairly, and demand accountability from those who neglected maintenance. But doing so would shatter the trust he had built with the team. They saw him as John, a fellow temp worker, not the CEO of the company. Revealing himself now might make him seem manipulative, undermining the authenticity of his experience. Instead, he decided to act anonymously. That evening, after returning home, Jonathan drafted a detailed report outlining the unsafe conditions and advocating for leniency toward Maria. He submitted it directly to the Corporate Ethics Committee, attaching the security footage and maintenance logs as evidence. Then, he waited, hoping his intervention would be enough. In the meantime, the night crew rallied around Maria. Despite their own financial struggles, they pooled tips and resources to help her cover any potential losses. It was a testament to the camaraderie and solidarity that existed within the team, a stark contrast to the cutthroat environment Jonathan was accustomed to in the corporate world. As the sun began to rise outside the store's windows, Jonathan reflected on everything he had witnessed. Maria's generosity, the team's unity, and the systemic issues plaguing the workplace. It all pointed to a deeper truth. MarketMax wasn't just a business. It was a collection of human stories, each one unique yet interconnected, and if he wanted to lead effectively, he needed to honor those stories, not just chase profits. For the first time in years, Jonathan felt a renewed sense of purpose. The night shift had taught him more than he ever expected. It had shown him the power of empathy, the importance of listening, and the profound impact of small acts of kindness. Most importantly, it had reminded him that behind every employee badge was a person with dreams, struggles, and untapped potential. As he prepared to leave the store, Jonathan resolved to bring these lessons back to headquarters and to transform MarketMax into a company that truly valued its people. The morning after the incident with the collapsed display, Jonathan returned to his penthouse apartment, physically exhausted, but mentally restless. The night had been a whirlwind of emotions: shock at the accident, frustration over the systemic neglect that led to it, and admiration for Maria's resilience in the face of potential disaster. As he sat on his balcony overlooking the city skyline, sipping a cup of coffee, he replayed every moment in his mind. He couldn't shake the image of Maria standing amidst the shattered electronics, her shoulders slumped under the weight of guilt and fear. For hours, Jonathan paced back and forth, debating what to do next. Revealing his identity now would solve the problem quickly. He could march into headquarters, demand accountability from those who ignored maintenance requests, and exonerate Maria entirely. but doing so would undermine everything he had worked for during his undercover stint. The team trusted him as John, a fellow worker sharing their struggles. If they discovered he was the CEO all along, it might feel like betrayal. Worse, still, it could diminish the authenticity of the lessons he had learned. Instead, Jonathan decided to take a quieter route, one that aligned with the values he'd seen modeled by Maria and her co-workers. That evening, he drafted a detailed report, addressed to the Corporate Ethics Committee. In it, he outlined the unsafe conditions that led to the collapse, attaching screenshots of the security footage showing Maria's repeated attempts to secure the display. He included copies of her previous maintenance requests, which had gone unanswered, and emphasized how the company's negligence had directly contributed to the accident. To protect his cover, he signed the document anonymously, using the alias Night Shift Observer. As he hit send, Jonathan felt a mix of relief and anxiety. Would the committee act on his findings, or would bureaucracy and red tape stifle any meaningful change? He knew the wheels of corporate justice turned slowly, but time was not on Maria's side. With disciplinary action looming, she needed immediate support, not just from above, but also from within her own team. Back at the store later that week, life went on as usual, or at least as usual as it could be after such an event. Maria tried to put on a brave face, continuing her shifts with the same quiet determination that defined her. But Jonathan noticed subtle changes. She seemed more withdrawn, her usual warmth replaced by a guarded reserve. When customers snapped at her or complained about minor issues, she didn't respond with her characteristic patience. Instead, she nodded quickly, avoiding eye contact and retreating into herself. One night, during a rare quiet moment, Jonathan approached her. "How are you holding up?" he asked gently. Maria hesitated before answering, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know, John. I've done everything right. I reported the problem. I tried to fix it myself. But no one listened. Now they're blaming me for something I couldn't control." Her hands trembled slightly as she spoke, betraying the calm exterior she worked so hard to maintain. "What if I lose my job? What will happen to my kids?" Jonathan's heart ached hearing her voice crack with emotion. He wanted to tell her that things would be okay, that he had already taken steps to ensure she wouldn't face unfair consequences. But he couldn't risk breaking his cover. Instead, he offered what little reassurance he could. "You're stronger than you think, Maria. You've handled worse situations before, and you'll get through this too. Just hang in there." Maria managed a faint smile, though her eyes remained clouded with worry. "Thanks, John. It means a lot to hear that." Meanwhile, the rest of the night crew rallied around her in ways that surprised even Jonathan. Carlos, the elderly janitor, brought her an extra sandwich from the employee cafeteria, insisting she eat something despite her lack of appetite. Priya, the shy teenager, stayed late to help Maria organize returns, lightening her workload without being asked. Even Linda, the assistant manager, checked in frequently, offering words of encouragement and assuring Maria that the investigation was ongoing. Their solidarity reminded Jonathan of the power of community. In the corporate world he inhabited, success was often measured individually. Bonuses tied to personal performance, promotions based on individual achievements. But here, among the night shift workers, success was shared. They supported each other not because they were told to, but because they genuinely cared. It was a stark contrast to the culture he had helped build at MarketMax, where competition sometimes overshadowed collaboration. A few days later, Jonathan received an email from the Ethics Committee confirming that corrective action was underway. The damaged merchandise had been written off as a loss due to negligence, and disciplinary measures were being taken against the managers responsible for ignoring Maria's maintenance requests. More importantly, Maria would not face any repercussions for the accident. The news brought Jonathan immense relief, but it wasn't enough. He realized that while fixing this specific issue was crucial, it was only a bandage on a much larger wound. MarketMax needed systemic change, a shift in priorities that placed people ahead of profits. Determined to drive that change, Jonathan began drafting a series of proposals aimed at improving workplace safety and employee well-being. Drawing inspiration from the kindness and resilience he witnessed on the night shift, he designed programs tailored to address the unique challenges faced by frontline workers. One initiative focused on creating a dedicated hotline for employees to report safety concerns anonymously, ensuring incidents like Maria's wouldn't fall through the cracks again. Another introduced flexible scheduling options to accommodate workers juggling multiple responsibilities, like parenting or pursuing education. But perhaps the most impactful proposal was the establishment of a hardship fund. Modeled after the informal pooling of tips and resources he saw among the night crew, the fund would provide financial assistance to employees facing unexpected crises, medical emergencies, car repairs, rent shortfalls. Jonathan envisioned it as a lifeline, empowering workers to navigate life's challenges without fear of losing their jobs or falling into debt. Once the proposals were finalized, Jonathan called an emergency meeting with his executive team. He walked into the conference room carrying folders filled with data, charts, and testimonials gathered during his undercover experience. For the first time, he allowed himself to step fully into the role of CEO, not as a distant figurehead, but as someone deeply invested in the lives of his employees. As he presented his ideas, he didn't rely solely on numbers or projections. Instead, he told stories about Maria paying for a broke student's meal, about Carlos humming old ballads while sweeping aisles, about Priya staying late to clean up spills. He painted a vivid picture of the humanity behind the workforce, urging his colleagues to see employees not as cogs in a machine, but as individuals with dreams, struggles, and untapped potential. To his surprise, the response was overwhelmingly positive. Some executives expressed skepticism at first, questioning the feasibility of implementing such sweeping changes. But as Jonathan shared anecdotes and highlighted the tangible benefits of fostering a supportive work environment, higher morale, reduced turnover, increased productivity, even the skeptics began to nod in agreement. By the end of the meeting, approval was unanimous. With the green light from leadership, Jonathan wasted no time putting his plans into motion. Within weeks, new policies rolled out across MarketMax stores nationwide. Employees received training on workplace safety, emphasizing proactive reporting and accountability. Managers were required to conduct regular inspections, ensuring displays and equipment were properly maintained. And the Hardship Fund launched with a substantial initial contribution from corporate headquarters, supplemented by voluntary donations from staff. Back at the downtown Chicago store, news of these changes spread quickly. Maria was among the first to benefit. Not only was she cleared of any wrongdoing, but she was also promoted to assistant manager, a recognition of her dedication and leadership skills. When Linda delivered the news, Maria burst into tears, overwhelmed by gratitude. "I never thought something like this could happen to someone like me," she said, her voice trembling. "Thank you." Jonathan watched from afar, smiling as Maria embraced her co-workers in celebration. Though he hadn't revealed his true identity yet, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment knowing that his actions had made a difference. The night shift had taught him invaluable lessons about empathy, connection, and the transformative power of kindness. And as he prepared to return to the store one final time, to personally thank Maria and the rest of the team, he knew this was just the beginning. MarketMax wasn't perfect, but with compassion and commitment, it could become a place where everyone thrived, not just survived. Weeks had passed since Jonathan returned to his life as the CEO of MarketMax, but the memories of his undercover experience lingered vividly in his mind. The bustling aisles, the hum of late-night chatter, and the faces of the night crew, especially Maria, remained etched in his thoughts like scenes from a favorite movie he couldn't stop replaying. He had spent countless hours reflecting on what he had learned, implementing changes across the company, and trying to align MarketMax's values with the humanity he witnessed during those long nights. But there was still one thing left undone: saying goodbye to the people who had unknowingly changed his perspective forever. One crisp autumn evening, Jonathan found himself standing outside the same downtown Chicago store where his journey began. Dressed casually once again, He hesitated for a moment before pushing open the heavy glass doors. The familiar rush of cool air greeted him, along with the faint scent of fresh produce and cleaning supplies. It felt surreal to be back, not as John, the temp worker, but as Jonathan Hayes, the man whose decisions now shape the lives of thousands of employees nationwide. The store buzzed with its usual energy, though it looked markedly different from when he last walked its aisles. New safety signs hung prominently near displays, reminding workers and customers alike to report hazards immediately. A bulletin board near the break room showcased employee testimonials and photos celebrating recent promotions, a testament to the culture shift Jonathan had championed. Even the mood among the staff seemed lighter, their laughter echoing through the aisles as they worked together seamlessly. Maria was easy to spot. Now serving as assistant manager, she moved confidently through the store, her presence commanding, respect without ever feeling overbearing. She wore her uniform with pride, her name tag glinting under the fluorescent lights. Her interactions with both customers and co-workers radiated warmth and authority, a perfect blend of kindness and leadership. Watching her, Jonathan couldn't help but smile. This was the woman who had inspired him, who reminded him that true strength lies not in power or position, but in compassion and resilience. He approached her cautiously, unsure how she would react. "Hey, Maria," he said softly, keeping his tone casual. She turned, her brow furrowing slightly as she studied him. For a brief moment, recognition flickered in her eyes, but then it vanished. "Do I know you?" she asked, tilting her head. Curiously. Jonathan chuckled nervously. "You might not remember me. My name is Jonathan Hayes." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. I'm the CEO of Market Max." Maria's jaw dropped, her expression shifting, rapidly from confusion to disbelief. "Wait, you're that Jonathan Hayes? The guy who owns this whole company?" Her voice rose slightly, drawing curious glances from nearby employees. Jonathan nodded, bracing himself for her reaction. For a moment, Maria simply stared at him, her emotions unreadable. Then slowly her lips curved into a wry smile. "So John wasn't just some random temp worker, huh?" she said, crossing her arms. There was no anger in her voice, only mild amusement, and perhaps a hint of betrayal. "You lied to us." Jonathan winced, feeling the sting of her accusation. "I didn't mean to deceive anyone," he explained earnestly. "I wanted to see things from your perspective, to understand what life is really like for our frontline workers. And honestly, Maria, I needed to learn lessons I couldn't have gotten any other way." She raised an eyebrow skeptically. "Lessons? Like what?" "Like the fact that we're more than just a business," Jonathan replied, his voice growing steadier. "We're a community. Every person here matters, not because of what they contribute to the bottom line, but because they're human beings with dreams, struggles, and untapped potential. You taught me that, Maria. Your generosity, your determination, your ability to lead even when no one's watching. It all reminded me why I started this company in the first place." Maria's expression softened, though skepticism still lingered in her eyes. "That's nice to hear," she admitted. "But does it change anything? Or am I just another story you can tell at your next big meeting?" Her question hit Jonathan like a punch to the gut. He realized she had every right to doubt him. Words were cheap, actions mattered far more. Taking a deep breath, he decided to lay everything on the line. "It's already changing things," he said firmly. "The new policies, the hardship fund, the safety hotline, the tuition reimbursement program, they're all inspired by you and your team. I saw how you helped that college student, how Carlos shared snacks with tired coworkers, how Priya stayed late to clean up spills. Those moments showed me the kind of workplace we should strive to be." Maria listened intently, her arms uncrossing as she processed his words. Finally, she sighed. "Okay, fine. Maybe you're not completely full of it." A small smile tugged at the corners of her mouth. "But don't think I forgive you for lying to me yet." Jonathan laughed, relief washing over him. Fair enough. Forgiveness takes time, and you've earned the right to take as much of it as you need. Over the next hour, Jonathan toured the store with Maria, meeting her co-workers and thanking them personally for their hard work. He made sure to acknowledge each person by name, recalling details about their stories and contributions. To his surprise, they welcomed him warmly, sharing updates about their lives and expressing gratitude for the changes sweeping through the company. Priya proudly showed off her newly earned certification in customer service, while Carlos joked about finally getting his preferred shift after years of requesting it. Even Linda, the assistant manager who had initially overseen Jonathan's undercover stint, admitted that morale had never been higher. As the night wore on, Jonathan found himself reflecting on how far Market Max and he himself had come since that fateful decision to go undercover. The company was still far from perfect, but it was evolving. Employees were beginning to trust leadership again, knowing their voices were heard and their needs prioritized. Productivity was up, turnover was down, and smiles were becoming the norm rather than the exception. Before leaving, Jonathan pulled Maria aside one last time. "Thank you," he said sincerely. "Not just for inspiring these changes, but for reminding me what truly matters. I'll never forget the lessons I learned here, or the people who taught them to me." Maria smiled, her earlier skepticism replaced by genuine warmth. "Just promise me one thing," she said, her tone teasing but heartfelt. "Next time you want to check on us, skip the disguise. We'd love to have you around, even if you are the boss." Jonathan grinned, nodding emphatically. "Deal." As he stepped out into the cool night air, Jonathan felt a profound sense of peace. Going undercover hadn't just transformed Market Max, it had transformed him. He had entered the store expecting to observe operations and gather data, but he left with something far more valuable, a renewed commitment to leading with empathy, integrity, and purpose. And as he glanced back at the glowing sign above the entrance, one that now represented not just a business, but a community, he knew this was only the beginning. The real work lay ahead, but for the first time in years, Jonathan felt ready to face it, not as a distant executive, but as someone deeply connected to the heart of his company.